Not that. Baxolile not that. Tako Robetso.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members of the Portfolio Committee, staff and officials from the department, and guests on the platform. Chairperson, I will hand over to you. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Morning, everybody. Llewellyn, morning. Can you do a roll call, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairperson. I have present in the meeting yourself, Honorable Binka Gigaba. I have Honorable Lexier. I have Honorable Morwa Sesla. I have Honorable Nodada. I have Honorable Madlingozi. I have Honorable Sukers. I have Honorable Boshoff on the platform, Chairperson. Thank you.
I'm also present.
Sorry, I also see Honorable CBC has also just joined us. Thank you, Chairperson.
And Mashabela, Mr. Brown.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me greet everybody, the members of the committee, and knowing very well that constituency, because we've got a legislation to process. Let me greet the DG. I've seen the DG is in the meeting together with his entourage from DBE. Let me also greet the members of the public that joined us let me greet our staff, our parliamentary staff from Parliament. And thank you very much, guys, for holding the fort for us to make things possible to reconvene. We took a break for the whole July because we thought it's necessary. Members were tired, but also I think we are still engaged in a lot of political work on the ground. But we've got now this legislation to process. One, let us say through July, I think we have managed to have awesome Mandela Day, wherever we were in our constituencies. But also there has been a lot of political developments. A lot of conferences has taken place. The ruling party made all the leagues have convened their conferences successfully. And we congratulate those that has made it to be part of the structures. I know Democratic Alliance has been having provincial conferences too. And congratulations to the fighters for the awesome celebration. You know, congratulations to you. DG, I must say on behalf of the committee, we know you have also lost your mother in July. And please accept formally our condolences. And we hoping strength to your family. And may the soul of the mother rest in peace. And welcome everybody. Just to rephrase or to refresh, we have agreed that we will reconvene, and when we reconvene, we will finish the reports of the Northern Cape and Eastern Cape today. And next week, we are going to have what we would be calling a national report reflection, visually as well. The week of the 15th of August, 15th to the 18th of August, we are going to have physical meetings in Parliament. Physical meetings which will have the Parliamentary Legal Services, physical meetings which will have the Department of Basic Education, physical meetings which will have us as members and anybody that is interested to join us. I am sure Mr. Brown is at an advanced stage with the members' itineraries to Parliament. We will transport you to Parliament. We will take you to the meeting venue. We will take you back to your houses. Till Friday, we will take you back home if you want to go home. So that is the decision that we took before we adjourned or we took a break in June. And we're still continuing as per our decision. Can you fly to the agenda for us, Mr. Brown? Do we have apologies?
None from my side, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay. Then members, on the agenda, we've got the consideration and adoption of the draft report of public hearings report, which will be the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape. Do you have minutes, Llewellyn?
We have two sets, Chairperson, the one of the 20th and the one of the 27th of June. Those were
And
the
I think
last
this
two
meeting
sets.
will be long. So if members agree, can we refer those minutes to the next meeting? Because at least we'll have one set of minutes. This is going to be a long meeting. So I'm requesting that we deal with the minutes, all of them next week, if the meeting agrees. So that's the agenda. Can we then adopt the agenda? Honorable Letsie.
Yes, good morning, Chairperson, to yourself, all honorable members. Good morning to the DG and the team from the department. Good morning to the Minister, Deputy Minister on the platform. Good morning to interested parties, the officials and interested parties who are on the platform and who have joined us from other platforms. My name is Tebogo Letsie. The name has not changed since the last time we met. I would like to move for the adoption of the agenda as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Murasetla.
Modula Studio. Re dumedise re feleletse ka gore all protocol observed. And I rise to second Honorable Letsie in moving for the adoption of this agenda, but at the same time supporting the proposal you have just made that we put the minutes, the 2 sets of minutes in abeyance and concentrate on the 2 reports from the 2 provinces for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can we then be taken to Northern Cape report?
Honorable Chairperson, the parliamentary staff, the Department of Basic Education, the Minister present, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and the entourage. Also, I recognize the presence of the stakeholders, the legal services of Parliament and DPE legal services, and everyone in partnership on the basic education sector. I greet you all. My name is Portia Mbude Muchekwane, the Cornet Advisor of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education. This morning, I'll present to you 2 reports, the Northern Cape Public Hearings Draft Report, as well as the Eastern Cape Provincial Public Hearings Report. The first page of the report highlights the content pages. The information there is quite basic and generic, which we have shared in the previous meeting, which outlines the purpose of the public hearings, the profile of the committee, what process is involved when the committee had undertaken public participation process, the public involvement and stakeholder awareness process, the attendance in all the municipalities by the public, the number of speakers by gender, the province of the Northern Cape, the participation of youth and children in the bill, the speakers' views on the BELA bill, whether they support, not support, partially support. Also, the report touches on specific comments made by the public on the causes. Towards the end, looked at key edges and tried to summarize support, not support, or partial. And the conclusion also highlighted some extracts of what the people had said, because we focused on what people had said and also while people had made some submissions. This second page outlines members who were present at the Northern Cape public hearings, and where there were apologies, they were noted by the Secretariat. I'd like to highlight that Honorable Bingo Kikabo was present, Honorable Adwans, Honorable Murasetla, Honorable Letsie, Honorable Yabo, Honorable Nodada, Honorable Fansdale, and Honorable Stokers. Where there are typos, honorable members, we'll try to rectify. Apologies for that. In the next page, we introduce the report with regard to the public hearing. The Portfolio Committee visited the Northern Cape, 3 municipalities, which is David Craper Local Municipality, Khasikhonyana Local Municipality, and Solblaki Local Municipality. The visits were conducted on the 2nd of June. The venue was Stoli Spellman Community Hall in Upington. On the 3rd of June, it was the venue at the Rangeville Civic Hall in Kuruman. The 4th of June, it was Solblaki Local Municipality at Maibuye Multi-Purpose Center in Khalishiwe. With due regard to the number of attendees at the public hearing in Northern Cape, there were 1,060 members of the public who attended the public hearings, that is out of the 3 municipalities. Of the 1060 attendees, 196 speakers made the oral submissions, which constitute 18.4% of the total number of attendees. Then 340 opted to submit the written submission forms, which were provided by the Secretariat during the public hearings. And that 340 makes 32.7% what that were received. And those ones were given to people who did not want to come forward and speak, but would prefer to write down their views regarding the BELA bill. Page 5 alludes to the public participation process and also highlights the public participation model of Parliament that give guidance on the framework of how we conduct all public participation processes of Parliament, whereby first and foremost, Parliament committees have to inform the public. Institutions within Parliament that have a responsibility to do that undertake activities regarding informing the public, disseminating the information, and also educating the public about what this bill is all about. Thereafter, the leg is called consult, that before the public hearings, there's a pre-visit where the staff members will also do an environmental scanning. Is this area that we're going to a safe area for the members of Parliament? Also, what are the issues on the ground? And we call it the environmental scanning exercise. And then the involvement aspect. It is now when the committee attends and is in the ground, in the public hearings in the province, and then the public hearings are conducted, a sitting is conducted, and that sitting is like any other sitting in Parliament. It becomes a parliamentary sitting, and then the public is allowed to participate. The last pillar is called the feedback pillar. We've now done 9 provinces. There's a process that also needs to evolve, whereby the public needs to be informed as to what has transpired, what has happened, and that the communication is given back also to the public. With due regard to the public participation process, I'd like to highlight that the committee ventured into the Northern Cape. There were preparatory processes that took place. A meeting was conducted with staff members, whereby management and internal stakeholders looked at the state of the preparation of the public hearings, so that when public is involved and public is invited, that the parliamentary processes are also adhered to. For example, the language services had to supply us with interpreters. Supply chain management processes were also involved, the logistics to travel, ICT.
What is going on? Who's this Dineo? Hey, Dineo.
Thank you, Sheikh. Let me rephrase the public participation involvement aspect, the preparation. Management and staff in Parliament and internal stakeholders conducted a meeting which we normally call a state of preparation or state of readiness for the public hearings, whereby we ensure that each and everything is in place, that the mobilization team is on the ground, and that colleagues also from the public education and parliamentary democracy offices, and as well as public relations, ensure that the public is informed and that we are geared up to live and support the provinces. Also, honorable members, I will highlight that because we have all languages that we prepared in terms of the materials, we also prepared the BELA bill in the official languages of the province as well as the Braille to ensure that people who are visually impaired may have access to the bill, participate, and be given an opportunity to participate. With due regard to the information, the communication that has happened, the PCS or the Parliamentary Communication Services interacted with the radio to inform the public through the radio, and also the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Gaba, had interviews with the radio, the province, which is Kurara FM, Radio Riverside, and Taimaneng FM, whereby the public were informed through the radio as well that the public hearings are happening. And this is the information which was also shared publicly, including the parliamentary website. This information outlined where the public hearings are happening in terms of the district. We had ZF Mtau, we had John Taulu Khaitriwe district, and the Francis Park district, the areas Paddington, Manisplagi, the local municipalities, the venues, dates, and times, so that everybody knows what is going on at the public hearings, the place, the venues, and that people can come on board and participate. 6.2 of the report highlights the stakeholders that were present who came on board. We thank them for their participation. The list was quite interesting. It was a range of stakeholders coming from political parties, community leadership, school governing bodies, federations, associations, the disability sector, the youth organization, teacher unions, trade unions, members of the legislatures, missionaries, and prophets. It was a whole range. And page 8 of the report then highlights every stakeholder that came on board to participate and to attend at the public hearings. I would highlight that the African National Congress was present, African Democratic Party, AfriForum, Amatemba Health and Wellness Forum, ASEGAI or ASEGAI community leaders, the Congress of the South African School Governing Body, the Concerned Parents Group, the Congress of the COSATU, ward councillors were present in the communities, church pastors and prophets, the Department of Basic Education, including the Provincial Department of Basic Education, the Democratic Alliance, Stability Sector, the EFF, FEDSAS, Freedom Front Plus, HOPE, the homeschooling sector. Also, honorable members, I would highlight that the members of the provincial legislature, the MPLs of the province were present, of the Northern Cape, the MEC was present, the HOD of the Northern Cape was present, the Movement Against Drugs and Alcohol were present, the PENSAL for languages was present, South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, SANCO, the SAOU, the SPEAR International Movement, the Rastafarian Movement. This now gives a range, including the youth at the bottom. That's the range of stakeholders that we were present at the public hearings. The department at the public hearing was given an opportunity as well to clarify to the public what the public hearing was all about, what the BELA bill was all about, what changes that the bill seeks to change, to bring on board, and the transformatory nature of the bill, and why at this point in time that the bill has to be discussed at these platforms, and how the valuable input from the public would make changes as people were participating. So first and foremost, the DPE was given that opportunity to clarify and encourage participants to participate. DPE's participation highlighted the following: why there were proposed changes for making grade R compulsory, including the starting age, the criminalization aspect for parents who don't want to ensure that their children are at school, holding the SGBs accountable for financial interest, abolishment of corporal punishment, encouraging homeschool learners to be registered, allowing schools to sell alcohol outside of the school hours, why that clause was proposed, giving government department heads power over language policies and curriculum. What was the reason there for the rationale as per the proposal? The public prohibit of educators from conducting business with the state. There are issues with that. However, that had to be clarified as well prior to the start of the public hearing. Section 7 of the report highlights the attendance and participation of all 3 municipalities. As indicated that we had David Craper, quality ZF Gau. At that local municipality, there were 401 attendees and 53 speakers. At Khasikhonyana in John Daulo district, the attendees were 232 and there were 57 speakers. At Francis Bart district, Solplaki local municipality, there were 387 attendees and 86 speakers. Now, overall, if you look at the number of attendees at those 3 municipalities, one would highlight that Solplaki had the largest number of speakers at 86, followed by Khasikhonyana, while David Craper attendees were less than the other 2. And overall, out of the 1060, the 196 speakers at Northern Cape, the participation was the number of the views will be discussed in the pages that are coming next. The next page highlights the number of speakers by gender. Our report consistently highlighted the gender aspect to understand the voices and the views of males and women, and also taking recognition of the communities which are regarded as the LGBTI, that when we look at the information pertaining our diversities, our communities, that we recognize everyone's participation. So for Northern Cape overall, there were 85 female speakers and 111 male speakers. And each and every municipality, in terms of the males and females, those numbers were designated. For example, at David Craper, there were 21 females and 32 male speakers. At Khasikhonyana, there were 22 females and 35 males. At Solplaki municipality, there were 42 females and 44 males. Hence, the overall is 55 versus 111 male speakers. So overall, there were more male dominance. The males were more prevalent, and particularly at the Solplaki municipality as compared to the female speakers. The 7.2 section of the report highlights the participation of children and youth. They came on board to bring a dimension that recognizes the role of children and youth in legislative processes, so as to promote participatory democracy. And this is also defined by the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child of 1989, which defines children as anyone below the ages of 18, which under the law is regarded as a maturity age, and also our National Youth Development Policy Framework from 2000. And the one of 20 will also be amended as when you look at the NDP come 2030. So those policies also define the young population and those youth which are also between the ages of 14 and 35 years. So what processes involved with the youth? We had youth at David Craper, Khasikhonyana, and Solplaki, and the percentages of the youth were 20% in Craper, 25% at Khasikhonyana, and 53% at Solplaki. In terms of the figures are highlighted. It's 4, it's 5, and 11, and on average, 20 youth or children participated, and the most also at Solplaki local municipality. Section 8 of the report highlights the speakers' views in all 3 municipalities. The orange bar signifies the speakers that supported the bill. The navy bluish bar highlights those that rejected or did not support the bill. The purple one is the partial speakers, and the maroonish color is those that it specify either way. Now, out of the 196 speakers across the 3 municipalities, at David Craper, we had 21 that said yes to the BELA bill, and 31 said no. 1 was partial, and no numbers were unspecified. In Hasi-Honyane local municipality, 29 speakers supported the bill, 25 rejected the bill, 3 were partial, no numbers were unspecified. Selplagi, that Jigizindo, 45 supported the bill, 38 rejected the bill, 3 were partial, and 6 were unspecified. The overall total, therefore, honorable members, for the North Cape in particular, 95 speakers supported the bill. 94 speakers rejected the BELA bill. 7 speakers were partial, 6 speakers were unspecified. That shows a very narrow or thin bridge between those who supported and those who did not support. And percentage-wise, the 95%, when I calculated using a calculator, gave me 48.4%, and the 94 gave a 47.9%. And the 7%, sorry, the 7 figure gave us 3.5%. So 6 plus 6, the figure 6 gave us 3% of those that did not necessarily partial. So the next page now gives the percentages. Again, we had to utilize a spreadsheet so that overall we can have a graphical information. When we utilize the spreadsheet, I think the spreadsheet did a rounding off of the figure of 49% and 1%. So these are the numbers, honorable members, of the views of the public with regards to the BELA bill. It was a neck and neck kind of a situation. Coming to the aspect of quality of participation, this is a stand item in many of the reports that we have presented, and what we mean by quality of participation, how it is observed. The quality of participation was observed in 2 ways. 1, by the level of participation of the speakers, as well as the process which evolved during the public participation process. What was then noted is that across the 3 municipalities, the attendance was very good. Also, the public demonstrated interest on the BELA bill. Another factor is the fact that the participants came from a diverse range of stakeholders, and they came to add value to the public hearings. During the public hearings, also, honorable members, some stakeholders made some allegations during the oral hearings, which allude to the process now of public participation and things that maybe future may be rectified moving forward. This, as the Secretariat had taken note of, was issues regarding pamphlets that were circulated in the Northern Cape. These pamphlets potentially misleading the public about the BELA bill, as the public had expressed. Also, honorable members, there were assertions expressed by stakeholders regarding the pamphlet, where in particular would highlight that the Provincial MEC for Education indicated that the committee itself, there was a member in the committee that was somehow misrepresenting the facts. This was also added on by the Congress of the South African Schools Governing Board. So it was not that the MEC, him or herself, but also the MEC as well as the stakeholders of the Congress of the SGP. This information came from. Also in the public, there were people who were alluding that there's distribution of pamphlets was somehow carrying information which was incorrect. One of the concerns was that this information that was being circulated was calling people to reject the so-called abortion. And as people were also indicating what was happening regarding this information, they were alluding to a member of parliament allegedly was doing this, and had therefore had asked that if parliament is coming with a bill and now call it a whatever abortion bill or whatever nature it is, somehow it means that when people are called to reject the bill by the very same portfolio committee, it somehow gives a misrepresentation, it somehow gives some confusion, and would this really be a fair process? So that's what utterances came on board, that as the people taking note of what was happening, we also had to flag and highlight this so that when the committee is looking at issues for rectification, in particular for public participation quality, those would be addressed and made right. So notwithstanding what the participants had expressed, the allegations as expressed with possible incorrect information, the public had indicated that this somehow portends to give a misconstrued view or a misconstrued understanding of the BELA bill to the society. 8.3 of the report alludes to clauses that featured prominently during the public hearings. I would like to highlight that clause 1, which deals with definitions, clause 2, clause 3, clause 4, clause 5, clause 9, clause 7, 14, clause 37, clause 41, clause 48, 1. These clauses were supported. Clauses that were not supported are the following: clause 2, clause 4, clause 5, clause 7, clause 8a, 10, 13, 14, 16, clause 21, 7, 37, 41, 52. They did not seem to enjoy the benefit of being supported. The last leg of the columns deals with clauses that were divergent in terms of vacillating between supported and not supported. And these are clause 2, clause 4, clause 5, clause 7, clause 14, clause 37, and clause 41. The next section of the report, section 9, highlights the comments specific on the basic education bill from the Northern Cape province. There is quite a lot, honorable members, but for the sake of this meeting, I will touch on quite a few and then go to the next municipality. But these ones were just very comments to made, as well as the recommendation per clause. I'll start with clause 2. Clause 2, which proposes school attendance that is compulsory for grade R, as well as the penalty provision in section 3, subsection 6 of the Act 96, which extends that penalty provision from 6 months to 12 months. So what did the public propose there? The SATU in particular welcomed and supported this clause. The SATU members were happy and noted that this clause that brings on board compulsory grade R will result in better circumstances and quality education for grade R learners as well as educators. However, there were also those who objected and would put both, of some opinions both. So the submitters who objected to the clause stated that grade R being a good thing, however, learners will need time to play. So why are we burdening learners with too much teaching time, whereas they could be engaging playtime? And also they noted that there is a problem with the grade R in the sector, and the money that is utilized or the funds would rather be used in the education sector at large, because there is a lack of schools infrastructure across the country, and therefore with not there being enough money, not even specialists which are sufficient to implement grade R, the money could be rather utilized for the infrastructure. Was clause 2. Clause 4. Start once again agreed with the proposed amendments of having HOD with authority pertaining the submission on clause 4 and on clause 5 as well on the language of the language policy. Another highlight from the MEC for Education indicated that there was they were supporting the proposal that approves HOD on admission of language and admission policies, noting that these were far too long. For too long, people are waiting, and somehow there was an exclusion of learners. So the bill, therefore, will correct the injustice of the past, which had made some learners not to be admitted. The recommendation which was made is that language policy should not be a prerogative of the state, but rather the SGP. So that was another recommendation which was made, especially by the COSA SGP members. On clause 8A, there were concerns that there were concerns raised regarding clause 8 in particular, where learners had raised that the issue of bringing alcohol to school also brings drugs and also brings weapons. SATU in particular and SGPs oppose the sale of alcohol in the premises. However, also one would note that none of the submitters really were quite happy and keen on this particular clause. One of the reasons being that 95% of crimes in society generally are crimes that are alcohol related. They cited issues of violence, cited issues of suicide in some communities. So the bill that now comes to school somehow was looked at as being problematic somehow. The recommendation made was that no sale of alcohol in public schools should be allowed, and alcohol should not be used for fundraising. The clause on alcohol is taken being wrongly. Some felt like that. So we're not saying that schools should sell alcohol, but that adults that are fundraising events should be allowed to use alcohol. That was now another view that was supportive. The SAOU on clause 14 rejected the proposed clause. I can also go to clause 37. I can others that are forward. On clause 37, honorable members, SANCO, civic structures, questioned why homeschooling is defended by certain groups. Is because it does not accommodate everybody, and that there was an point made that many parents cannot afford homeschooling due to financial circumstances. The Congress of South African Schools Governing Body agreed with the proposed clause 7 and said that homeschooling should be regulated. There should be the necessary assessments of homeschooling, and that the evaluation should be done. Another question which was raised regarding homeschooling is that why is it that the homeschoolers do not want to be registered or regulated? Those who are opposed to clause 37, that is the homeschooling parents, the homeschooling practitioners, including the homeschooling learners, ACDP members, and Democratic Alliance members, they indicated that a one-size-fits-all approach does not seem to do justice to the individual needs. So the bill must make an alternative be possible. Also, another aspect that was raised is that they are rejecting clause 37. As much as the clause 37 is written with good intentions, they are rejecting it with all the practicability that goes with it, which did not take into account the consultation, they've not consulted, the research that must happen, and that learners being homeschooled, they're learning at their own pace in a conducive and safe environment, and that their parents are teaching them there's no bullying in the homeschooling sector, and therefore they're also opposed strangers coming in to visit their homes to evaluate what was going on, and in particular the issue of applying to register as well. They are really not for that. One of the recommendations made, therefore, was that the parents deserve to have the ultimate say on what is best for their children. That parents should only have to just notify the department, but not necessarily register. And that the department should focus the energy in the budgets on addressing the schooling for many children who find themselves homeless and children who do not necessarily have proper schools infrastructure. Another recommendation that was put forward is that the government should allow home educators to teach their children, and that way they are encouraged to develop, they are supported with no indoctrination by the system that wants to square up and fit everybody else one circle. The department must conduct proper research, and that homeschooling and homeschool learners should be consulted on any aspect regarding homeschool education. Others propose that the bill must be discarded. So in a way, they do not want any prescription of any sort from the department. The views were balanced, honorable members. Those who are supporting the bill, the clause 37, and those who do not support it. Now, as we go to clause 41, there are participants who supported the proposed clause, and there are also those who did support the clause. Let's look at first at those who supported. The proposed clause 41 was welcomed in the sense that it seems to bring on board provision for learners who are pregnant, and also it seems to talk to the management, how learners should be managed effectively in school. Again, SATU had welcomed to advocate for a girl child to be at school so that this girl child's education will not be compromised. Sango said CHC did not mean children would be allowed to have sex. Children were already involved, and therefore they were also receiving advice from their friends, and this advice oftentimes would be advice that was not helping the children. So with this kind of scenario, the bill then would reduce the risk of children getting unwanted pregnancies, including drugs and other substances. Those who opposed the bill came also with propositions that say the bill will allow for sexual orientation in schools. The bill will also bring on board the use of contraceptives and then an abortion without the parental consent. There was a question why government will agree to abortions when this is against the Bible, and that the bill could be used as a weapon to indoctrinate or sterilize the children, which was a fear that was expressed, and that some had felt that to introduce the CSE schools is not from South Africa, but from Europe, and this needed to be opposed. And if the bill is passed in its current form as it is, many children would not even know the gender identity in the future. Another thing that was indicated was that they are rejecting clause 41. They're rejecting the possibility of criminalizing parents and educators for abortion. And now the state now wants to exercise an overreach in this aspect. Children need to be raised properly and not become pregnant during school time, and that parents must assist proper upbringing, etc. So these were some of the issues that were raised generically around the BELA bill in the province. On page 23, for the sake of time as well, I will quickly take you through the issues that were emerging at David Craper local municipality. The issues became the diminishing powers of the SGB through the centralization power of the HOD, compulsory grade R, admission and language policy, centralization of procurement, closure of non-viable schools, home education, powers of the minister to make regulations, and management of learner pregnancy. 10.2 highlight other issues raised. The other issues raised relate to issues which are not necessarily covered by the bill, but would regard as them as other issues or service delivery issues that were being raised. At David Craper municipality, these issues were the issue of the school dropout, that there's high dropout in schools, which the departments need to address. There's a lack of libraries in the Northern Cape province. There's the issue of electricity, as we know, the learner transport, which all impact on quality education. There was also a view that the current quintile system is somehow problematic, particularly when it comes to quintile level 4 schools. There was a school which was mentioned, it's Albert Primary School, that in this particular case, this school was wrongly classified as a quintile 4 school. So this needs to be addressed as well, the issue of quintile in schools. The Bible study. The participants raised the issue of why the Bible study was removed from the curriculum and the teaching of the learners. And they were calling that these Bible studies should be brought back to the curriculum. Another aspect was raised was the issue of the communities whereby they were exploited by the farmers, but the very same farmers never invite farm workers and their children join their children's schools in terms of supporting schools. I will go next to the Hasehonyana local municipality. Again, there I'll look into the service key issues that emerge and the other issues. There's the diminishing power of the SGB, compulsory grade R, admission and language policy, centralization of procurement, closure of non-viable schools, home education, powers of the minister to make regulation, and management of women pregnant. The issues that were raised, other than the clauses in the bill, there was an issue that blended learning is not addressed in the bill, and therefore it should be regulated. A concern was also raised regarding the quality of textbooks which were written in Setswana. They were not happy with the quality. The other issue was there's a shortage of teachers in schools which affect learners, and the temporary teachers who had no educational background, let alone the qualifications to teach, were being used in the system. The issue of the shortage of classrooms, that learners are taught under the trees, and the issue of pit latrines and the deaths that occurred because learners that occurred within the province. The safety and security of schools was also noted as a service delivery issue, which must be looked at as a challenge. Honorable members, the comments run from page 25, this particular municipality, up to, if it was only one province, I would touch on some of them, but I think I've done the comments on the province generically. Let me look at Salt Plaatje. At Salt Plaatje municipality, which was the third municipality, the issues raised on the key emerging issues were almost similar to the other two municipalities. However, key issues emerging were quite different from the other two. One would highlight that the participants at Salt Plaatje municipality raised an issue regarding learners with disabilities that were not being supported, in particular, children who oftentimes find themselves not having schools that are accessible to them. This particular submission came from the Disabled People of South Africa, that's the organization. There was also an indication that disabled children are being discriminated against as they're not allowed in public schools, but told to go to special schools. And yet, in the Northern Cape province, there are very few special schools. The SAOU union proposed alternative governance model. They also raised an issue with the school curriculum currently and the transformation that needs to happen with the school curriculum. They were paying for sanitary towels for girl child to all the schools, and the issue of school nutrition that would also extend to pregnant learners who are those who are at home as well. That SACE offices are not accessible. They find distances walking to find SACE offices or to travel to there. Issue of upskilling of schools governing body members, as clause 14 requires that they must declare their financial interest and all that, and they must handle budget and finances of the school. However, as GPs, some of them not necessarily have such competence. So the issue was raised that they need to be upskilled, they must be trained, they must be capacitated so that they may fulfill their roles and responsibilities as SGP members, in particular when it comes to governance of this. Also, additional services were requested, most prominently the issue of bringing on board the social workers, as well as the partnership with the Department of Health and other services like the Department of Health is to address the issue of the undocumented learners. Clause 9 will also be comments that were raised in a similar fashion that I've done with the other generic ones. Now, this page 44, out of the comments from the participants, we had to look at the issues that were raised by the participants and the speakers that would be addressed as issues for the department to respond to. We also had to look at issues that the state law advisors, both from Parliament as DPE, well to note of, and the recommendations for the portfolio committee. Now, on section 13 of the report, issues that the department would note are the following. Coming from the participants is the fact that the department needs to build libraries and school infrastructure for children. The government should replace asbestos and freight as flay or valet and rim mark. The issue of the quandaling system that the DBE may intervene and assist for the proper classification of schools into the right or correct quandaling of schools, as currently schools are struggling to operate or they do not necessarily have sufficient funds and parents are really struggling to pay the school fee. There's an issue of school ownership or the property, whereby many of such schools are established in land that was owned by the churches. So where the school is situated, the view is the issues of the land belonging to the churches need to be bit also difficult. So the DPE needs to look at the issue of ownership of the property. There was a proposal that they look into the three-stream model, and that this three-stream model should be introduced to ensure that all learners are cared for. There is a request for the clarification of school living ages. It's 17 years, 18 years, that needs to be clarified. The bullying in schools must also be done away with. Learners had expressed on the clause that deals with misconduct as well. The Constitution provides that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. The Freedom Charter confirms that. So that speaker in particular commended the DPE for the courage and the bravery of bringing this consolidation into an existing policy in a way that says, DPE done well by bringing this bill, that you've taken the Constitution into account and you've taken the Freedom Charter into account. So as much as some who critique, there were also the comments which were encouraging the initiative from DPE. That the freedom of choice for parents, for their learners, particularly in homeschooling, should be taken into account. Research and consultation on home education must be done, as well as the socio-economic studies. The CSE, the parental consent for children under 12 years, is a concern. DPE must note that. There was also a mention that it seems that with clause 41 in particular, this clause gives the minister unfettered autonomous powers on management of pregnancy, and that the bill has no regulations, for example, high dropout rates, and this must be addressed in the bill. So those are the issues that we from Northern Cape participants. that the DPA can respond to or address regarding this bill. Issues for state law advisors that were noted are as follows. A question was raised that when is education law superior to constitution law? That question was raised by the public participants. Clause 337, subsection 3, requires home visits by state officials, which is seen as a violation of a child's constitutional right to privacy. So can you look into the issue of the right to privacy and look into this clause 37, subsection 3? One speaker was of the view that the public was misinterpreting the bill and stated that there was nothing mentioned in the bill about the abortion issue. So the speaker alluded that some people were misleading the public to serve political interest, and that the bill seeks to introduce mechanisms rather to manage the high pregnancy rate at school. So the state law advisors also need to look at clause 41 and try to make it understood, that the public understand what this clause or proposed. There was a request that when the draft regulations were published, who were the drafters of these regulations? Now, where I sit, I don't know. The public wanted to know whether they want to know their names, their portfolios, or their social standing, but there was a question that was asking, who are these drafters? Is a question that can be addressed there. There was an assertion that the bill is not aligned to the Children's Act and the Constitution, which means therefore that the state law advisors will look at the Children's Act, look at the Constitution, and look at this bill and check if there's any alignment. Some refer to this BELA bill as hate speech bill, as it did not allow for practice of religious beliefs. Is a BELA bill hate speech bill? State law advisors can guide there and give us some direction. The bill is conflicted with the prescripts of the Constitution, which provided for freedom of speech. The bill will result in court actions that will swallow more public funds. State law advisors help to clarify that so that the bill will go in the direction that it should go. The proposed recommendations. Now, this now comes home. What did the public say about the BELA bill? And how did we frame the recommendations from the public? Honorable members, we tried to frame the recommendations according to the thematics that emerged right when we started this bill, and one of them was a thematic on access to basic education. And with access to basic education, submitters are calling for the payment of salaries for grade art practitioners through the Department of Basic Education PPN budget. They are also calling for early learning centers integrated into DPE and that grade art teachers be capacitated. There's also a recommendation for resource allocations in terms of learning materials, staff, and funding that should cater not just the grade R, but all category of ECD providers, all centers, and those that not only operate in formal schools, but operate outside of formal schools, as long as they are ECD providers. They should be supported as a recommendation. The bill should be amended as well, ensure that all schools have adult basic education and training. That's the AP. Came from the floor, from the participants, that schools as they are, they should ensure that it is happening on an ongoing basis. A comprehensive high school should be built at the Tshweneng village, which will cater for technical, commercial, and agricultural studies That was a plea from the public regarding that specific village where they would like to have a technical school. On compulsory learner attendance, parents recommended that both parents in schools are responsible for learner attendance and that unfair discrimination should be stopped in as far as admission policies are concerned. On the issue of budget and finance, it is proposed that when budgets are presented, there should be a forum to ensure that there's a democratic principle. These are conducted also in democratic principles so as to transform. There was recommendations also for a 3-year clean financial audit, and that it should be compulsory for all schools, especially those that have girls, majority, to have free sanitary towels catered for in the school's budget or from the DBG budget. There should be, DBE should establish a working relationship with NPOs to get food schemes for weekends, for holidays, and after school. To give children nutrition during only schooling hours is not sufficient, but there's a consideration for weekends and holidays when learners are not necessarily at school. Admission and language policy theme. There's a call to stop that unfair discrimination in as far as languages is concerned, as well as admission policies. And that SGB's powers to formulate admission policies will not be restricted, and that clause 4 and 5 of the bill will add to an admin burden if this proposed clause is allocated powers of the. Some may propose that therefore that clause 4 and 5 should be amended, that the language policy should not be a prerogative of the state, but rather that of the SGB. There's a relationship that the SGB has with the schools community, and the SGB are on the ground at the schools and they know the school better. With regard to school management and governance, it is proposed that alternative government should be noted and that SGB should comply with this minimum criteria determined by the Minister about the academic performance of the school, and that there should be 3 years proven record regarding academic performance. Is this school performing? The movement against drugs and alcohol said Mandela will be turning in his grave today for where this country was. There needs to be a space where leaders play their roles effectively. And in this statement was made regarding the fact that now clause 8 says there's a condition by which the alcohol is sold. So that's how you replace it. DPE would have to consider additional personnel or partner with other departments to get resources such as cops, police, nurses, and social workers. And on the upskilling of SGBs, recommendations was made for at least a prescribed level of literacy requirement for the SGB members. The participant had raised that at large that sometimes, yes, an SGB members elected by all means that is recognized and respected. But then when it comes to now the role and the function being fulfilled, SGB members struggling with in the basic literacy, it requires such that this being reviewed so that people won't be put into positions and they're being frustrated in their roles that they're really playing out of view of the fact that they were not given the basic access to education for their own development. And it's a very profound statement, and it should be taken in the light of developing people rather than judging that they don't have the skills, but rather let's develop the nation and move forward. On home education, homeschoolers and those who are not homeschoolers, I would say supporters and the proponents, homeschooling should be regulated and home learners should be registered. Others recommend that homeschooling should be allowed without having to register or having to apply for any admission. Home education should not be prescribed. The bill must be returned to the drawing board, and that there must be adequate consultation with the entire homeschooling sector. That the DBE needs to conduct proper research on homeschooling, and the homeschooling sector should be consulted. Teaching of children should be investigated through home visits, and assessments are also supported. There's a last bullet which should read, homeschooling was recommended to be scrapped, something like that. But I think when you adopt, we'll look to that. On the aspect of the clause relating to educators and also is thematic, there is a recommendation for SACE, that SACE offices in the Northern Cape province should be accessible even to those educators who are in far extreme rural areas. On the aspect of curriculum, economics must be compulsory in schools. The 4IR, which is the fourth industrial revolutions, are needed in rural areas, including the network for infrastructure. School curriculum must be outlined and aligned to one of the higher institutions, and children or learners finish what they are doing must align to the institution of learning of higher education. It was also recommended that religious education be brought back at school. On the freedom of choice, learners should be given the freedom to attend schools of their choice, but preference should also be given to local learners. That is regarding the schools. On the special education needs, even though the bill is supported, there's a recommendation that public schools be accessible to learners with disabilities. Learners with disabilities should not be discriminated against, and they should be allowed in schools. These are our children. DBE should ensure that every school is accessible so that children, learners with disabilities, are treated like any other learner. Government should protect the needs of intellectually challenged learners. Adult education and training should be introduced in rural villages. On the aspect of social cohesion, a recommendation was made for sport facilities, and that libraries should be built. There was also a recommendation for online learning, that the bill should mention online education system to support the growth, development, and allow learners to obtain excellence in knowledge. On management of learner pregnancy, DBE should assist teachers with resources, better equip, and to better assist the pregnant learners. DBE should collaborate with sister departments when it comes to learner pregnancies. On the sale of alcohol, that's one recommendation. No sale of alcohol in public schools should be allowed, and alcohol should not be used to fundraise at school. On the closure of non-viable schools, the public has called that small schools should not be considered for closure without consultation with affected communities and parents. Section 15 outlines the general observations on the bill and then that's 15 point, section 15, and then the 15.2 is comments on the public participation aspect. I would try to summarize quickly by noting that the public is calling for redress in South Africa, that it must be respected, and that while some speakers are calling for the entire bill to be scrapped, others are saying the bill is long overdue. And if these imbalances are ignored, it means that South Africa is not going to move forward. So its transformation is a long overdue process, and there's a need to look at things in a holistic way for the best interest of a child. Outside the Northern Cape Provincial MEC, who indicated that all schools in the province are his responsibility, and he has had some experience in the shortcomings of the current South African Schools Act. Therefore, the proposed amendments are quite appropriate. The bill should unite the country and its people, and also to promote standard of life. That the government should also focus on solutions on the issues of crime. Those were opposed, of course, and also the issue of don't look at this bill, rather, but look at the issue of crime that is affecting the country at large. On the aspect of public participation, the public had raised an issue that they will not give enough time to read the bill. A concern was raised regarding the bill being referred to as an abortion bill. The particular issue which was raised was an example of a flyer which was distributed. Some were making expressions that people are somehow conducting themselves in the public hearings in a way that was not taking into account that we are dealing with children here, and children are important and are national assets of our country. And that it was noted that where there was any justification, it was unacceptable for people to just reject the bill without any plausible reason. Those were opting to spread information which was not the right one. There was also an issue on the public participation aspect, and that what was being urged is that the public should not bring politics and religion with the public hearings, but rather let's look at things that takes the future of the country forward, and that the public participation process must not be made to degrade to racial issues. And then there was a reference also to the issue which was made in Flag Plus, which was commented on by one of the people in the Rastafarian community. Honorable members, section 16 of the report now provides a summary review of all the expressions made by the public in the Northern Cape province. Supporters of the bill say it's long overdue process to address the principles of equality, the issue of redress, and the issue of transparency. So the bill, therefore, is in the right direction to close that gap, which is in the current SASSA legislation. Also, it was welcomed that Clause 2 is a necessary platform. And also the issue of monitoring of learners was also welcomed. And the practical challenges faced by the system that there needs to be addressed, in particular the issue whereby also the SGPs had somehow in the past had used the issues of their powers being misused. So this needs to be addressed. There was also a support for the proposed quarterly reporting cycle, which will cap the problem of misuse of funds. And that the reconsideration of Clause 27 of the BELA bill, which outlines the process for the closure of small and non-viable schools. That the department had also to look into the issue of when these schools are being closed, this also increases. And also the department will also, while you're closing the school, learners have to walk long distances. So the issue of utilizing transport was also quite important, because when there's no safe or reliable transport, younger children become vulnerable, and this subjects them to unsafe conditions. Again, those who are supporting the view that the education system is facing a serious challenge regarding clause 41. So this clause seeks to legislate learner pregnancy in line with the existing legislations as per the bill and the rights, which stipulates that no one should be discriminated against. And that those who argued to support clause 37 were supporting it in particular to ensure that there was adherence to specific standards and that the fear around homeschooling was misplaced. And therefore, it was important that the department or the government per se has a responsibility to know what is happening with children, either that they are in public schools or being homeschooled, because every child should have access to quality education. Those who were not supporting the bill highlighted the view of centralization of power that is bound to create problems. They also indicated that it seems that the governing bodies remained ideal structures on the aspects of admissions policy and language policies. General observation noted is that in the Northern Cape province, most participants were unanimous in their rejection of Clause 8 of the bill, which deals therefore with the possession and consumption of alcohol. Also, the issue of the principle of cooperative governance, that each school's role in terms of the roles and responsibilities on SGP should be clearly defined. There was an emphasis that SGPs are best placed to make decisions on language and admission policies. And regarding the financial reports, those against the bill asserted that it was putting an undue admin burden on the SGPs, the issue of declaration. Also, there was an argument that the SGP's declaration of financial interest was rather unconstitutional. On clause 37, that the bill is unresearched and it doesn't cater for the needs of learners, because each learner is unique. Another factor which was put by those opposing the bill was that where there are issues of overcrowding in schools and lack of adequate infrastructure and the unavailability of educators, the DPE does not, through this bill, attempt to resolve any of these challenges, and therefore it's something that must be dealt with. Some had also looked into the issue of the provincial systems that seeks to monitor the public schools as a fair view. Then on the last page, there's the ones not supporting the bill were also indicating that there's a concern that the bill seeks to usurp the rights of parents to decide about their children and to make decisions about pregnant children is something they believe that it's a parent's constitutional and divine right. And that from the parent's perspective, a learner needs support from her family. And that comprehensive sexual education is a foreign tendency seeking to impose a form of colonialism in the education system. Those who were partial on the aspect of clause 2 indicated that this clause should not undermine the rights of employees that participate in a protected strike. They also argued that there are sufficient laws pertaining to criminal conduct and violent protest, and the bill should recognize that. On clause 41, those who were partial also indicated that this must be dealt with in a manner that looks at the rising pregnancy at schools. However, it will also provide a framework on how best it is to deal with this matter, especially where a girl child should be remaining in school. On clause 16, there was an expression of concern there that the learner and teacher material, LTSM in particular, being proposed on clause 16 was a concern because some provincial education departments, this would be adding an additional responsibility where already the provincial departments had lack of capacity to deliver on quality material on time. And rather, the school's governing body can determine the specific material they need and the requirements of such materials for the schools. on the issue of the clause 37, participants were partial, indicated that the bill take away the responsibility of homeschooling if it is given. This bill in particular takes that responsibility away, and that it should rather be the challenges being faced should be dealt with, and that the parents are consulted. The final decisions that are going to be guiding the process expressed by the committee, particularly the chairperson, to thank all the participants that came to support or not support or a partial. But what was important was the fact that the public of the Northern Cape came, all 3 municipalities. The inputs were ensured that these inputs will be put into a perspective, will be deliberated by the portfolio committee, and that their participation was ensuring that a better South Africa and a better future for the children ensure a quality education. That's how the chairperson had concluded. Section 18 of the report then were just excerpts of the speaker's comments and notes, which some of them were utilized to craft and draft the report of another. Honorable members, that's where I would end Northern Cape report. I thank you for that pause. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Posh. Members, that's the Northern Cape set of minutes report, what had transpired in the Northern Cape from the 2nd to the 4th of June. Can I now, except for the typos and anything else, can I allow time for corrections?
Chair, let them fix my surname, please.
I've mentioned that. Except for that, which she will rectify. It's not only you, I think, Nodada as well, Sukers and Murwatsetla. Yes.
Except
Sukers.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to my colleagues and everyone that's on the platform. I quickly just want to, I have comments and rectifications or additions, and all of it, as I said, not additions, sorry, as per the report that was presented. Chair, in terms of the Northern Cape, the allegations of misleading info by a member of the committee, it should be noted that that was primarily made by 2 unions and the Provincial Education Department, and not by people in general. Then in terms of clause 27, the closure of small schools, the aspect of the bill that is objected to is the requirement that the MEC does not have to give reasons to small schools when closing them. There is no mention in the report of the number of comments made. Across the 3 hearings, I noted 34 speakers opposed the closure of small schools. Then in terms of clause 37, another aspect that was highlighted by a homeschooling mum in Northern Cape and not captured is the role of homeschooling for especially special needs children. Then in terms of clause 41, there's no mention is made of the statements that the public made setting out reasons why they stated that this is an abortion bill, i.e. the regulations made in terms of the bill would be made in terms of the policy on the management on learner pregnancy. The public said they would continue to call it an abortion bill until the details of the proposed regulations were disclosed. Here again, the vast majority of speakers opposed the clause. It was also not only ACDP members who opposed this clause. Then in terms of 14.13, mention is only made of support for clause 41, and no mention is made of the rejections, although this appears in the detail of the hearings. No notice is taken that many speakers called this a schools abortions bill, or who called it objected to the involvement of schools in referring learners for abortions and contraception and are opposed to CSE. Recommendations for DBE that was made, many homeschoolers noted that the DBE has not consulted with homeschoolers and lacks research. Homeschoolers explained also in the Northern Cape that no joint liaison committee for homeschooling exists in the Northern Cape. And this is despite the fact that the DBE circular S14 instructs that the PDEs must establish these liaison committees. The MEC invited homeschoolers to write to him in the Northern Cape. The following comment I am making is not for inclusion in the report, but for the committee's information. Only 2 of the 9 provinces have joint JLCs that meet regularly. 2 more provinces have committees that do not meet regularly, and the rest have no GLCs. Gauteng and Western Cape are the 2 provinces where regular meetings are taking place. It was evident in the hearings that officials in those provinces were well informed on homeschooling and did not need to address home education. Officials in other provinces had comments on home education.
Honorable Sukers,
Yes, sir. Yes,
with
ma'am.
all due respect, I had asked for corrections. Now, don't tell us what had happened in provinces.
Ma'am, with due
I take it
respect,
that you are done now with correcting what was left in the report.
yes, but I do think that I'm allowed to make comment, Chair, as a member of this committee and
Let's
as a
just
member of
stick
Parliament.
to the agenda and the
Chairperson.
agenda. I had asked for corrections.
Yeah, Chairperson, my hand is up.
Can you please just stick to that? And I take it you have now we have now finished doing that. If you
Finished,
don't mind, can
speaking
I
or
go to
finished?
the next speaker?
Excuse me, Chair, I didn't hear what you asked me.
I'm saying I called for corrections in the report. You have done that. We have taken note of what you have raised. So what had been happening in provinces with MECs and the resident of those provinces, it's not what I've asked that we do.
I am making a correction in terms of the report. I think I've made
Chairperson, my
those and
hand
I've
is
made my
up on a
comment.
point of order.
Okay, Honorable Moratsehla.
Yes, Modula Stulo, a really cheers waka. Redumedise everybody on this all important platform. And it's just that unfortunately the hand on a virtual platform cannot be written order. I actually rise on a point of order, especially by the time when Honorable Sukers started bringing into the meeting matters outside the report. Because you see, Chair, we are not on a discussion point here. We are trying to discuss the report by way of adding what might have been left accidentally or by way of taking out unnecessary intrusions. So, given that I felt I must raise a point of order that Honorable Sukers is out of order for bringing in alien things which are not related to this report as presented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moratsehla. Can I now allow Honorable Nodanda?
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning to everyone. I do think that, Chair, you did echo our sentiments around the condolences to the DG, if he's still on the line, with the passing of his mother. Chair, I just wanted to maybe start with your remarks, because I think it gave a bit of guidance, but I think it will also assist us, getting clarity on how we we deal with the process moving forward, and then I'll make the necessary comments on this particular report. Chair, you did indicate that there was an agreement of how we're going to proceed, and I just wanted to maybe get clarity from you so that when we do deal with the reports, we deal with them in the procedural way that you said that we will proceed by. And I just wanted to maybe in check with you, Chair. We are obviously dealing with these two reports today, which are the last public participation oral submissions that have been made. Is it to check with you, Chair, that the same process will then be followed through with the written submissions? Just a clarity so that I know exactly how we're dealing with the process. And the thoroughness of the presentation will be the same as the public participation reports that we're getting now, as per your initial comments in the beginning. And then secondly, is the department going to make comments on what they think needs to be changed in these reports when we deal with them entirely, and we've concluded with all of them. And then the last one, Chair, is just whether the parliamentary legal services, based on the inputs that you would have seen throughout these reports, including the one that Portia just presented now, that talks about constitutional aspects and legal aspects, will they be able to give us a clarification whether we're above board in terms of clarifying any legal prescripts or any constitutional ambiguities that exist there? Then, when it comes to sorry, man, I missed one more thing in the department, and whether the department has already indicated to us what the financial implication of passing the law is, so that we are informed by the right procedural way of handling the bill in its entirety. And I think all of us want to get through it because it's been a very long process for all of us. But obviously, we want to do it in the right and correct manner so that we don't, at a later stage, like people have been threatening throughout the bill being challenged in other platforms. Then, in terms of these reports, I think I don't know whether the person that was drafting the report initially had forgotten all of our names and surnames, but those need to obviously be corrected. And the clarity-seeking question I have to Portia and the staff, and maybe through you, Chair, is when they say that elements of the bill are contentious, do they quantify that qualitatively and quantitatively, or do they just put it there as contentious clauses just because two people said, well, we agree with this, and other two people said we disagree with this? And I ask this because these are the last reports we're dealing with, so that we understand what the context of that is. And then I think just generally the bills, the report is well crafted, but I think there are some corrections that need to be made then, because it's a reflection of what has transpired in those hearings. So if I could really get guidance, Chair, in those four clarity-seeking questions based on your initial remarks, and my one question to Portia based on the report itself. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Morotsetla.
My Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I do not know whether I should call this point of order or what, but I think the preamble brought in by Honorable Nodada is not going to assist the meeting. Instead, I would say and plead with members of the Portfolio Committee that can we, for now, be focused on the report and any other thing like the program adopted as to how we are going to proceed going forward. If anybody feels he or she must bring it to this meeting, it be brought at the tail end. But for now, my plea is it not possible that we can concentrate particularly on the report? We adopt the report. The issue of the other program of how we are going to go on forward be treated separately apart from the report. This is my plea, Honorable Chairperson, and I thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Morwatsatla. No, Tata, is that a legacy hand now, or what is going on?
No, Chair, I just hope that you're going to, or hope we're going to rule, because we do this when the minister's here. If she makes remarks, we comment on the remarks, we ask questions, we go into the content of the presentation. I don't think there's any difference from what we're doing. So I'm just pleading with you, Chair, let's just have patience with one another. I think all of us, we want to get through the process, and we've indulged you in your comments and your guidance, and we've also asked questions on the report. I don't think there's an issue there, and I hope you're going to rule on that, Chairperson, so that we do proceed without having back and forth and all of that. And I think all of us, in the spirit of making sure that we deal with it.
Okay. We have, like I have said, except for the typos, which is what you have raised, because remember what I had asked for is for us to correct the minutes. Except for the typos and what Honorable Sukers have raised in terms of clause by clause, what the public have said, which she thinks that it has been omitted, which I think is what you have taken note of it. Now, I want the committee to understand that with that being affected in the Northern Cape report, I am now requesting that we adopt the Northern Cape report. And then I'm going to come to what you have raised, no data, which of course will be part of my closing remarks on the procedure on how will happen after this meeting. But let us deal with the agenda of today and the issues of today, so that at the end, what you have raised, I have noted everything. I will then respond to that. Can we, if there is no other correction, can we adopt the report? Honorable Sukers?
Chair, I am still at, I didn't complete the corrections that I wanted to make. I was stopped by the intervention of principal and then by yourself. I want to conclude my remarks on the corrections.
Conclude them.
So in terms, I want to thank Sis Portia for discretion in not mentioning my name as the member of the committee accused of misleading the public. But in SOAP like it was clearly stated my name by several of the union members and by the provincial executive. So for the accuracy of the report, it can be included, because I definitely stand by the accuracy of the description of the bill and as an abortion bill, and as covert and insidious clause that leads, that could lead to the policy on the management of learner pregnancy to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we adopt the report? No, Tata, can you lower your hand or adopt the report? One or the two. So, Karis, can you lower your hand? Honorable Atwans?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to everyone in the platform. Chair, I move to adopt the agenda as presented with the corrections of the errors that were made. But I moved to adopt the agenda as it is. I mean, the report as presented by Mrs. Portia.
Thank you very much, Honorable Morwatsatla. What is going on now with your hand? Can't you lower your hand?
Who's that one?
Not that.
No, maybe it's unable. Okay, Chairperson, let me rise on behalf of myself to support the move by Honorable Aduans that this report indeed is a true reflection of what transpired in the Northern Cape I was there in person. Thank you very much.
I am 30.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, can you take us to the Eastern Cape report?
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, I'm going to,
Honorable Adwans and Honorable Nodada, your hands are up. Can you lower them?
thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. We have noted the comments that we have raised. With all due respect, I'd like to apologize where there are typos. It was not intentional.
Apologies, Honorable. Honorable Itzia, you are also raising your own hand now.
Yes, and apologies, Chair, for disturbing Mamposha when she's about to start with the Eastern Cape report. Chair, when members of the public are invited to the meetings, these particular meetings, they are not supposed to be making comments. They are invited to observe. Now, on the comment section there's a sorry, Charlene Chevet Swart, and I'm sorry for pronouncing it not right. She's making comments there, which I believe that she must be called to order and be reminded that her status in this meeting is to observe and not to be making comments here. Thank you very much, Chair.
I'm sure she has heard you. I saw it, but I decided not to respond. We don't have time for that. We are dealing with serious issues here. Can I allow Sispoj to proceed? We really don't have time for any other thing that is not what we are here for.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. To proceed with the I can't explain something that may be. As I indicated, it was not.
Of course, now we can't hear you. Try
Can you hear
to
me, Chair?
make some movement.
All right, I'm in the same spot.
You are fine now.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, over the past few months, I developed a cataract on my left eye, which gave me an option either continue with the work and bone operation or continue with the report. I felt, let me proceed with my work, because if I'm not at work, it would mean that the report lies, not being completed. So I'm apologizing that there are typos. We will look to that. So with all due respect, please bear with me. We'll finish. In terms of the report format, when we receive the public comments, how we crafted the report, we had to look at the public comments, look at key emerging issues from the public comments and the bill, and also look at service delivery issues. Thereafter, try to summarize in terms of the statistics, give a graphical representation of the bill, summarize the support, not support views, partial views, etc. And then where there are issues to be taken note for the DBE, the state law advisors, the committee per se, we craft that. So whatever is in the report, it is more the public views, what the public had expressed. I felt I must just raise that before I conclude with the last public hearing draft report. The one I'm going to present now is the Eastern Cape, which was conducted on the 9th of June to 11th of June, 2023. The content pages is similar to the other reports. I'll skip that one. The attendees and the profile of the committee remains with a new additional member, Honorable Rane, where apologies were submitted, noted, and then the areas where the public hearings were conducted. The Portfolio Committee conducted the public hearings in 3 local municipalities in the education districts that were also identified. From the 9th of June, it was King Sabata Dalindyebo Municipality at Mthatha Hall. The 10th of June, it was Enoch Mgijima Local Municipality at Tobikula Indoor Sports Complex in Queenstown. On the 11th of June, it was Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality at Nangoza Jebe Community Hall at New Brighton. With due regards to the number of participants in the Eastern Cape public hearings, out of the 3 municipalities that were visited, 1,143 participants attended the public hearings. Of the 1,143 participants, 207 made oral submissions to the BELA bill, which therefore constitute 18.1% of the total number of attendees. And of the 1,143 attendees, 561 or 49% opted to make the submission forms, which were distributed in the public hearing at the hall to those attendees who were present. We did not admit or receive submission forms that came from outside of people who were not there, but we said people who are in the hall would be the ones eligible to make those submission forms. The public participation process is the same, it's generic. Before the public hearings conducted, there were pre-preparation meetings which were conducted, followed by public involvement participation to the public. Communication strategy included the posters, the WhatsApp videos, the promos, as well as the educational information content, which was distributed by Parliamentary Communication Services and the Parliamentary Public Education Unit. The radio platforms as communication channels which were utilized was Umhlobo Wenene FM, the True FM, BELA FM, and CRFM. These are the radio stations, and I think 1 or 2 of them, there were 5 made radio interviews conducted with our chairperson, Honorable Gigaba, informed the public about the bill, that there are public hearings ongoing in the province, and also thus making the public more aware and more about public hearings. The stakeholders that came on board in the Eastern Cape allude to the African National Congress, the African Youth League, the Black Solutions, the African Christian Democratic Party, the COSA SGB, community structures, DBE, and provincial education officials, circuit managers. We also had an international participants from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We had the agricultural development sector, or the ECD practitioners, Eastern Cape Department of Education, the legislature member, the federation, which is FEDSAS, homeschooling sector, Wanobuhle Senior Secondary School in Utenig or Gareha, the Khoisan traditional leadership, the traditional leaders of the province, the Satau, the taxi associations was also present, the Nelson Mandela Bay, the students, SRC, the Marxist students. The religious sector was represented by a Christian Center, the Islamic Faith, the Apostolic Church, with structures, UNDP, STAPA, SACC Forum, the South African Churches Forum, SANCO, the Ward Committees, and Freedom Front Plus. The range of stakeholders for each and every province, you can see how the public were so keen to participate in this bill, and they came from various sectors. In terms of the venue and logistics, This was dealt with by parliamentary support services to ensure that the participants attend and that transport plans were coordinated by the committee section together with public, which outlined how participants were transported from one venue, from one area to the venue where the public hearings were conducted. Once again, here, honorable members, on 6.4, the role of the department at the public hearings, I will not necessarily repeat that one. I did specify it in the previous report. On section 7 of this report, highlights then the attendance and participation in the 3 municipalities. OR Tambo district, the venue was in Pata Hall. There were 389 attendees and 61. Day 2, Chris Hani West District, at Tobikula Hall, there were 271 attendees and 68 speakers. At Nangoza Jebe, Nelson Mandela Bay, there were 483 attendees and 73 speakers. And therefore, the graphical representation here that summarized the overall speakers for each local municipality and attendees highlighted that there were more attendees at the Nelson Mandela Metro, which is 483, as well as the number of speakers there were more by 60, followed by the Chris Hani West. On the number of gender dynamics on the next page. Overall, again, in the Eastern Cape province, there were 56 female speakers and 145 male speakers. To disintegrate or deaggregate for each various district, at OR Tambo, there were 15 females and 51 male speakers. At Chris Hani district, there were 21 females and 41 male speakers. At Nelson Mandela municipality, there were 20 females and 53 male speakers. So that brings us to the overall figure of 56 males and 145 male speakers overall. And with the LGBTQI community one, the Secretariat could not determine the number of those who were present, but if the numbers would be finished, would also highlight that. And the prevalence of the male speakers was dominant in all 3 municipalities, particularly more at the Nelson Mandela Bay. And the female speakers representation were mostly represented at the Chris Hani municipality. In terms of youth voices or children's participation, they also came on board in the Eastern Cape. There appears to be 67% at Nelson Mandela, 28% of youth and children at Kusani, and 5% at OR Tambo district. And the figures 1 OR Tambo, 6 Kusani West, Nelson Mandela Metro, which gives on average 21 youth or children that participated, and mostly again attended at Nelson Mandela Metro, followed by Chris Hani. With due regard to the views of the speakers in the Cape, the views of the speakers on the basic amendment bill, honorable members, the blue bar signifies the speakers that supported the bill. The orange color bar is those that rejected the bill. The gray, partial, the yellow is unspecified. At OR Tambo, 3 has supported, 17 rejected. 3 were partial, 3 were unspecified. Chris Hani West District, 47 supported the bill, 19 rejected the bill. were partial, and no unspecified speakers. At Nelson Mandela Bay Local Municipality or Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, 27 speakers supported the bill, 41 rejected the bill, 2 were partial, and 3 speakers did not specify. The last column outlines, therefore, total average number supported and not supported. So in the Eastern Cape, 117 speakers supported BELA out of the 207. 77 speakers rejected the BELA bill. 7 were partial, and 6 speakers did not indicate whether they support or reject. It was just sort of, they did not declare. So that's how the speakers' view were regarding the BELA bill. Now, when we translated also the numbers into a graphical representation, 57% of the speakers seem to have supported the bill, whilst 37% rejected or not supported the bill. 3% of each, that is partial or unspecified. And these are the figures moving down in terms of percentages and the numbers. So that's how the representation of views of the speakers in the Eastern Cape translated in with regards to the support across the quality. On the aspect of quality of participation, again, I would highlight that the individuals and organizations that came on board to participate seem to have participated, being interested in this bill, and the process was also identified by the level of participation, which was quite good, again, in the Eastern Cape, and the diversity of inputs that was received by the committee, as well as a critique which was expressed by the participants, highlighted the challenges that our country is facing. Observations made related to the process of public participation included also some service delivery issues, would highlight as follows. Number 1, the committee noted that there were comments which were made by the traditional Xhosa chiefs who requested to be consulted on matters pertaining to the education of the children. The chiefs expressed that these are our children, whatever decision that is being made, they live in the communities with us, so count us in. The Khoisan traditional leadership in attendance at the public hearing made a profound statement to the committee that please acknowledge every person and let us become a colorless society and accept that we are a community of South Africa. They were sitting in the right at the front row, and expressions being made were saying we should not look at each other in as much as we're a diverse nation, but let's look at each other as a South African. The trade unions present, especially the long distance taxi drivers or SATAU, as well as the teachers union SATU, called for issues of safety, transport, infrastructure, and welcomed clause 2. Some participants welcomed the process of opening the public hearings with prayer, which is a symbol that South Africa identifies, while speakers from the Islam faith touched on the issue of national best practice in relation, and they cited examples, for example, countries like Germany, if you look at ECG, also look outside and look at developed countries, which was also identified, one of them being Germany. Some political parties, youth affiliations, civic structures welcomed the bill. I would mention structures such as the African National Congress, SANCO, COSAS, while others like ACDP and DA and homeschooling sector rejected certain clauses, not the entire bill, but certain clauses. And FEDSAS most of the time came with remain partial, some closed. The unemployed social worker, unemployed educators, parents, and as they vehemently oppose the sale of alcohol in the premises. Some of the Costa SGP comments allegedly pointed to a panel member distributing pamphlets and raising abortion, thus influencing the community. All in all, honorable members, Eastern Cape being the last province for the public hearings, one would note that the comments by participants on clauses of the bill, as well as service delivery issues that were mentioned, yielded the requirement aspect of public participation mechanism that enhances Parliament's strategic objective of public participation. If you look at the Parliament's strategic objective, you find public participation. So as a committee, we have listened to the voices of the public. The committee having listened to the voices of the public and the public being given an opportunity to have their views listened to, have their views being made public. That objective was met. 8.3 of the report alludes to clauses that featured in the public hearings. For the Eastern Cape in particular, clauses supported clause 2, clause 4, 5, 4, clause 37, 51, and 50. Clauses which were not supported is clause 2, clause 4, clause 5, clause 8a, clause 10, 13, 14, 1.7, 1. And divergent one, which vacillates between clauses supported and supported, is clause 2, 4, 14, 37, and 41. Section 9 of the report looks at a summary of key emerging issues, also taking into account those that were making the submissions as well as oral speakers. On the definition clause, which is clause 1, the public is calling for a clear definition of what do you mean by corporal punishment. How do you define a meeting, particularly given that the COVID time is not necessarily physical, but also virtual? So they are proposing a clear definition of the word meeting. On the recommendations, the recommendation states that the insertion of the definition on corporal punishment therefore needs a review. On clause 2, FEDSAS, SATU, SANCO supports and welcome clause 2, which is the introduction of compulsory grade R. Some speakers alluded that grade R improvement will ensure that grade R learners do not pay fees. Concern raised was the fact of inclusion of grade R in a compulsory schooling, where learners at grade R should really not be in the concert. So these were comments which are being said that they should rather be more at the play school level. Those not supporting, I would mention the Democratic Alliance raised the following concerns. The government may not have adequate resources, classrooms, or trained practitioners for grade R. The bill seems to advance penalties against those who would default, and that there are no funds for the introduction of grade R. The recommendation that was made is that threatening parents with 12 months jail time or a fine of both for not complying is not the South African way of doing things. Another recommendation is that the model used for the PPN needs to be reviewed as it somehow creates some confusion. On clause 3, NAPTOSA comment agreed with the monitoring of school attendance of by and school management teams. On clause 4, some had said that admission requirements are disheartening. So admission requirements that detail the father of a that requires details of a father who has never supported the child is utterly not welcomed. Those not supporting the bill had indicated that they are opposed to the powers of HGBs to decide on admission policies being taken away. The HOD should only intervene when there may be issues of discrimination. Most children are raised by single parents, and they're also opposed to the issue of the HOD taking powers, and that taking powers of the HODs to decide, sorry, they are opposed to the HOD taking powers of SGB to decide on admission policies. On clause 5, most speakers alluded that SGB powers should not be taken away under any circumstances. The National Association of they agree that the HOD be empowered to unlock the stalemates with admission and language policy of schools. NAPTOSA SATU supported the proposed laws and indicated the following. Teaching should be facilitated using mother tongue. The bill seeks to endanger mother tongue education. That is another point that came on board. Mother tongue is compromised while English is given priority. Language policy is a challenge in former model school and it is used as a discriminatory tool. And that SGBs should determine the language policy of the school because they are the parents. On the last column, find the recommendations there that says mother tongue should be promoted in education. Mother tongue should be prioritized for teaching and learning. SGB powers to decide must not be taken away, and that there should be precise and urgent supporting action by national government through DBE and all schools and colleges to ensure that languages are utilized and that they retain their status at all levels. For example, that is Xhosa being the dominant language utilized in the Eastern Province, being utilized at all educational institutions, and that it also deserves the same educational status like other languages. So be it to all other languages of that province, that they must have the same status. On clause 8, the view there is that on the issue of the sale of alcohol in public schools, the children are already suffering from many abuses. How much more when liquor is sold? That was raised the question mark. Teachers are already at high risk. They are at high risk in the schools. Alcohol will make it worse. Another point raised was that alcohol kills the brain cells. On the recommendation side, the recommendation was that schools should be a no-go area for alcohol. Schools and DBE must find other means of fundraising. The department must ensure that the establishment of recreational facilities are the ones that take care of alcohol, not in the school. Alcohol should be 5 kilometers away from the school as per the bylaws. The bylaws already indicate that there should be no sale, or actually the bylaws of the Liquor Authority was indicating that the alcohol must be 100 kilometers away from the school perimeters, and that the department must collaborate with other sister departments like the South African Police Services, Department of Health, and the speakers implored the DP to consider employing securities and social workers at the school to deal with the other social ills accompanying the abuse of alcohol. Clause 9, on the issue of misconduct, the expression made there was that the bill is silent on misconduct and the possible related issues, therefore, and that the recommendation would be there must be police at the school gates that assist to search the learners. On clause 10, the abolishment of corporal punishment, learner discipline has declined in schools, given that there are no alternatives to corporal punishment. That corporal punishment has made the society better, and now that there's no corporal punishment, there's destruction of learner behavior, which has also some implications. The corporal punishment can result in an immediate compliance from persons that are being punished if it is implemented. Some felt that the corporal punishment should be instilled in schools. Again, the issue of the wording, it was not clear. And what actions by teachers when they are attacked by learners, what do they do? Because learners oftentimes, they, as I said, they do attacks on the teachers and they feel vulnerable in that regard. The recommendation made was that the department must provide alternatives to corporal punishment. Teachers must be protected against the learners. There must be something in place for discipline. Since learners know that there's no corporal punishment, then they do as they please. On the issue of merger of small schools, the speakers had raised the fact that small schools are equally important to people. And therefore closing them would be something which is very dangerous also for the assets of schools. And that by closing these schools, the closing itself would be destroying, which is something also wrong. And then when learners migrate, for example, from a township school to other schools, they leave the small environment, and that creates a problem with the resource which was already being built. So the empty schools then become used for drugs and issues of rape. The proposed closure of measure of non-viable schools will deprive children of quality schooling closer to their homes. This will expose children to inherent risk that while they're being transported to schools away from home, that is also associated with it. Parents will have an increased expense in a time that most families are already struggling. Recommendation made there was that closing and merging of schools should be reconsidered. Instead of small schools being closed, the small schools must be supported. On clause 14, SATU supports the quarterly audit of school finances. Some submitters had noted that literacy level of SGBs is a serious concern. Noting that the financial aspect of funds and funding and budgets and all that, the requirement would be such that this must be taken into account. The disclosure of financial interest is problematic, including centralized procurement of learning and support materials. Some had opposed to the disclosure of the financial interest by SGBs. Recommendation made was that the SGB must be given incentive for their work. SGB must be compensated for their work. The department must continuously train the SGBs. Minimum literacy level of parents in SGBs should be metric. On clause 16, those not supporting the clause put some arguments that central procurement is discouraged as it promotes potential corrupt practices. Further, they questioned how could they say procurement be centralized when the department officials were corrupt. Certain powers resided with SGBs who were accountable to communities they serve and not the government. Another aspect was that no one held the HOD accountable. The recommendation made is that the department must equip schools with the necessary tools for teaching and learning. More work is needed to be done regarding the distribution of resources and educators, especially in rural schools, and that schools must be allowed to procure their own learning, teaching, and support materials. The department must make stationery and textbook available for all learners in school. Clause 17 was supported by SATU, but referred to it as being too vague as it seeks to amend Section 2 of SASSA, that the HOD had to withdraw on reasonable grounds. Clause 19 was opposed for a minister to have powers to determine the number of SGB members serving on the board of the SGB. I can skip others and go to 27. Clause 27 on the closure of public schools and the MEC undertaking consultative process. The comments made there was that small schools should not be closed. There was a concern that the small schools being closed without providing any reason is a concern. There's more than 150 children that would be affected by the closure of the small schools. The concern was also that the children would be going to schools, and this would be other schools in particular. They would have to go there with a cost of learner transport, and the distance would be too much for them and their families, and this would ultimately affect their whole lives. It will be difficult to educate children if small schools close, and it will be harder for others to do the home education. On clause 37, clause 37, there's 33 financial records and statements. Submission of quarterly reports on all income and expenses in clause 33 will place a financial burden on some of the SGPs. Clause 36 was not supported. The increase in terms of those who found to establish cottage schools without registration was not supported. Some supported the registration of the independent schools. Clause 7, let's park there a little bit. What the oral submitters is indicated that home education is useful and should be monitored accordingly. This statement comes from those that had supported it, SATU being one of them. All forms of schooling in the country must be regulated, including home education. The bill is fully supported, and there was a further stress that home education should be assessed. The bill does not limit home education. What it does, it protects the child. Therefore, the registration is supported. Sango Yena is against the homeschooling concept for a reason that we also explained. And then the participants not supporting the DA and ACC, who indicated that home education should not be regulated as it is in the bill. They are also opposed to it by officials. It was a statement on the privacy, which was raised by learners themselves and their parents. The clause gives them too much power. No regulation should be made on behalf of families who want to homeschool. Home education clause does not seem to relate to the experience of scholars. This was said by the youth, the children who were there. Parents would have the right to homeschool their children without seeking the permission of the department, and they made it very clear. No prescribed CAPS curriculum. They don't support that because they feel this will lead to an enforcement of CAPS within the school education sector if you take the CAPS curriculum. Some participants and members of Pestalozzi were also against clause 37. They asked, how can all be treated equally if no one person on earth is equal or the same? They were also indicating they have not received feedback or acknowledgement for the submission they made in 2022. They are opposed to the minister having the power to regulate registration and administration of homeschooling. Clause 37 is insidious. Another comment made by another speaker, that it leaves the minister with unfettered power to make rules without due democratic process. Clause 38, veterans oppose the clause, and 41 on the management of learner pregnancy. Those opposed had called this bill a violation of human rights, the abortion bill, asked whether the department will also take accountability. If the law is passed, it will be easy to cover for principal and staff who impregnate learners and threaten them to keep quiet. They disagreed with learners who get pregnant and have abortions without the parental consent, and that pregnant learners are a concern. Reject Section 41, which grants the minister powers to make the regulation that no sex education leading to child pregnancy, abortion, without the parents' consent. They're expecting educators to facilitate abortion. Okay, the expectation that teachers or educators facilitate abortion is beyond their core business and the scope of practice, whereby the teachers were saying, we are teachers, not nurses. We cannot do the functionary of the nurses. So this was also opposed. Issue of opposition was a comprehensive sexual education. The material is well explicit and will promote child-on-child sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and violence. On clause 50, okay, before I go to clause 50, the recommendation on clause 41 was made as following. The department must consider health staff in supporting pregnant learners. Teachers should not be used as midwives. Teachers should not be burdened with pregnant learners, and that the department should develop strategies on learner pregnancy. Clause 50, the employment of teachers, including absorption into should be conducted in a fair manner. That's how it went, honorable members, with regards to the overview of generic. Now, going to the specific local municipalities, let's start with OR Tambo. What key issues emerge from OR Tambo local municipality? At King Sabata Dalinge Amtata. What did we think about the key issues that emerged? The first one was a definitive corporal punishment as it stands in the bill. The participants revised. Compulsory grade R was an issue. Admission policy, language policy, mother tongue, especially that mother tongue must be promoted. Alcohol sale in school premises, which was objected to. Abolishment of corporal punishment, HOD powers regarding centralization of procurement, closure of small and non-viable schools, SGP powers and stipend, inclusive education as per white paper 6. People feel white paper 6 is long overdue, must be included. Home education, direction of it, I'm supporting it, management of learner pregnancy. Now, the service delivery issues that were raised at Tata were as follows. That research must be done for home education, including this SEIA, which is the socio-economic impact assessment. The learner dropout is crucial to be addressed. The reopening of teacher colleges, because universities are not providing or producing the caliber of educators required by the sector. The learner high dropout rates, the factionalism in the provincial education department affecting schools in the Cape. The scholar transport issue, where there's none, where schools are closed. 50 infrastructure for schools and lack of resources. Pit latrines, that the pit latrines must be phased out and building of new ones to be addressed, including the ablution facilities. Infrastructure for schools, which are lacking. I think, sorry for the education there. Values in education was also raised, which also includes that people are calling for religious education being brought back, valuing diversity, etc., etc. Substantive role of educators versus that of wife, and nurses supporting learners who had experienced in pregnancy. Those were the issues. At Krizani municipality, there are issues which emerged as follows. The PPN for grade R practitioners, compulsory grade R, admission policy, language policy, alcohol in schools, issue of undocumented learners, the HOD powers regarding centralization, procurement, removal of corporal punishment, decentralization of power, removal of powers from number of appeals for dissolving SGB, closure of small and non-viable schools, SGB stipend, the capacity building, training for their training, and recruitment of personnel by SGPs was also an issue. Inclusive education, SPY paper 6, home education, management of learner preferences. Honorable members, these key issues as imaged have been cited in the column, the table column, clause by clause in the following page. Service delivery issues and other issues which are not necessarily in the bill include also the issue of full service high school rural areas, teachers receiving comprehensive training, in particular the technical skills that are required. Resources required to promote independent learners. Schools should be given regards for security. They also observed a trend that after age 18, learners were becoming pregnant for the purpose of receiving grants. On the aspect of comments and recommendations per clause, I think I would skip that because I've read a lot on the issues. Same thing with Nelson Mandela and okay, Nelson Mandela, let me read their issues there. Similar, almost similar, the compulsory grade R admission policy, mother tongue, alcohol, and learners, centralization of procurement, the role of SGPs, the principal and ex-official roles in the moratorium on closure of small schools and non-viable schools, the stipend, home education, learner pregnancy. Service delivery issues at Nelson Mandela, where education is a human right, the special needs education, the curriculum for the special schools, that is in terms of the skills. Functional difficulties that learners experience include the short-term memory, delayed motor skill development, language issues or language disorders, and sensory overload, that the Eastern Cape Department of Education capacity to deal with factionalism and alleged corruption in learning and support materials that came on board as an issue. On the special nutrition and the national certificate for adults, which is NASCA and learners, the issue of security guards for school safety and security, the issue of rape and drugs are not mentioned in the bill in terms of how the schools can deal with that. There must be police and stations in the surrounding schools, increasing admin workload on teachers, a huge number of unfilled teacher posts. Department needed to invest resources to have this book filled. There's critical support for rural schools, attacks on teachers and violence that should be dealt with, pressing concerns, curriculum, safe infrastructure, and recognition of efforts. Honorable members, I will also skip their comments and go to service delivery issues. Absence of fathers in the education of their children. This was raised by the speakers. Issue that the committee at large, okay, I think I can address. The bill is not being able to address education for learners, education needs, issue of overcrowding, which presents a challenge. There's a call for Christian visible in the education through this bill. Schools must have teachers, safety and security of both learners and teachers. In terms of clause 10, bill does not regulate online learning. Parliament failed traditional and cohesion leaders when the Act 3 of 2019 was debated in Parliament. The bill does not make provision for special schools children. please look at that. That's what the public had called for. Now, on section 12 of the report, these are issues packed for to take note of. The socio-economic impact assessment, they say this, the bill indicated that there should be infrastructure of grade R. The participants cited Mr. Ndebe that Mr. Ndebe said homeschoolers only need to register for homeschooling, whilst the bill is saying they need to apply or register, etc., and so on. So they need a clear and concise language in terms of the definitions and the interpretations, so that there's no confusion on their part. Sorry to use the word confusion. Discrepancy. The minister's authority to appoint anybody or anyone who will teach, even though they don't have a state registration, something to be looked at. Issues like eradication of pit latrine, the dilapidated school infrastructure, and schools dropouts has not been addressed in the bill. There's an example that they made regarding a grade 1 learner that the pit latrine here. The speaker indicated that the government was now money, emphasizing that they, whilst on the other hand, the government was supposed to conduct site inspections for the issue of pit latrines. The DP would focus and place resources on adequate infrastructure in schools, has been repeated. Proper quality relation to the schools built environment. Department must equip schools with teaching and learning. The closure of small schools without transport is not acceptable. The proper quintiling of schools in quintile 4, which are wrongly allocated and underfunded, review that the DBE should look into the bringing social workers to schools, especially in the northern areas of their calling. They spoke about a Peter Morel model. They looked at it as something that the department can look at in terms of deployment of activities. The reopening of teacher colleges must be taken on board, because the teacher quality that is there from the university, they've said it is poor, not the same as came from the. Again, for DBE, the appointment of SGP, when they look at personnel issues and the inefficiencies when it comes to the functions that they render, and some of the functions going back to the DBE. Teachers were trained to teach, they're not trained to deal with pregnancies, so this matter must be dealt with by DBE and the Department of Health. And closing of the gap in terms of public education institutions. The unfilled teacher posts, there are too many. They said department must invest to resources and help the schools to have teaching posts. For the state law advisors, the participants noted a contradiction in the law regarding the issue of alcohol. They cited that according to the Liquor Regulations Authority, nobody can sell liquor within 100 meters of school. And yet, the BELA Bill Clause 8A proposed the sale and consumption of alcohol in school premises. So how can this be? So they want this contradiction to be clarified. Another issue raised for the state law advisors that to note is a clarification on statutory age of consent in terms of criminal law of 2007 on sexual offenses and other related matters. The children under age consenting to sex or being sexually abused. Teachers and principals are also impregnating minors at schools, and even other minors as well. They should be looked at by the state law advisors. What is the law saying about such issues? Also, in the aspect of statutory age, in South Africa, one is considered to be an adult at the age of 18. And yet, The bill speaks about a 12-year-old having to make a choice on their own regarding abortion. The clarification is Clause 2 regarding the legal status of learners in activities, especially the reappointment of personnel. Some clarification required there. A question was raised. Where is the law that says exams should only be in? The public wants some answers there. The intentions of the bill were vague and not clear, which is clear it's being left open to various interpretations. The state law advisors could assist there. A call for redrafting of the bill, a clause protecting freedom of curriculum and or approach, and that any assessment must be done according to that approach. The clauses must be clear with no possibility of conflict of interpretation. There should be more advocacy for child-centered legislation. There's also a request for provincial consultative forums to be legalized or established. The bill is too vague on clause 17. And according to the municipal bylaws, in what the speaker was trying to say here is that with existing municipal bylaws that has outlined the 100 meters issue, how then does the BELA bill even consider now allowing the schools to have alcohol on the premise? Under the age of 18, are the learners legislated or legalized to consume alcohol? Because the age of being an adult in South Africa, as per constitution, is 18 years. And most learners are below the age of 18. So how does one then start to sell? This question came for underage. Proposed recommendations. Now these ones come to park the thematic recommendation number 1 on access to education, that the portfolio committee would also look and seriously apply the mind regarding the merging of small farm schools and rural schools, because the instances where learner transport is not available due to non-payment of service providers by the department. On the access to education of the grade RPN, after being compulsory to all, and the grade R being adequately resourced teachers who are also adequately remunerated. They are also calling for the age limit of grade R being specified in the bill. For example, the fact that the age limit for grade 1 should be 7 years. So what's the age limit for grade R? Securing of funding, implement grade R. They feel that it's not equally funded right now, and grade R being compulsory. The government do not need to cough up millions, but billions of rand, meaning that lots of money is required for the grade R implementation. The addressing of the issue of undocumented learners. The speakers indicated that these learners are missing out on the benefit of accessing education. So this issue must be addressed. Clause 2B, Clause 2B and Clause 2A that extends jail term from 6 to 12 months must be reviewed. And compulsory schooling, what was critical there is that there's a high rate of illiteracy in the province, that the government needs to focus on things that benefit the poor the most. Also, the government should focus on the young and vulnerable children, especially those who have nowhere to go to exit school. And instead of focusing on just setting political interest, the legislation should put the welfare of the children first. Parents need to take responsibility for learner attendance and establish partnership with school. There's a call for the draft rural education policy to be implemented. On the language policy, the recommendation is that language policies should be influenced and determined by the demographics of the school. mother tongue language must be given priority when it comes to teaching and learning, and that the powers to determine the school's admission and language policy should be vested in SGBs. I think we've cited this one, the issue of the language policy needs a close look into, and that there should be no neglect of other languages like isiXhosa, for example. Learners must be taught in mother tongue rather than just or promoting English only. SGB power to decide on school governance matters must not be taken away, and language should not be used as a discriminatory tool. On the budget and finance challenges that need to be addressed on the recommendation include funding from national government department to education should ensure urgent and proper corrective steps, support the bill to be in full control of the school. Centralizing school finances at provincial office is seen to be problematic given corruption tendencies. School fees must be abolished in all schools. SGBs must be given stipend for their work. The department must equip schools with the necessary tools. The SGBs should not declare their financial interest. Central procurement is discouraged. Quantal for schools should be reviewed, and that the funds are decentralized in schools. On the government and management, the SGB powers, they should not be taken away under any circumstances. The clause 10 should be extended to include any other form of punishment. That also means being cruel to a learner, using degrading comments, also humiliating circumstances, or anything that scares or ridiculing a child. And name calling, that is also should be included in the clause 10 apology, which deals with clause 10. The department must equip schools with the necessary tools. The department must provide alternative to corporal punishment. SGBs must be trained on how to handle budget and governance aspects in line with their roles and responsibilities. So that means they are responsible for governance, not management. However, they must be capacitated. On homeschooling, homeschooling education is seen as being useful. It should be registered and monitored accordingly. The department should adequately consult with homeschoolers. Research and investigation to be thoroughly conducted. And education, on the other hand, those of whom they should not be regulated, and it should be left with the discretion of the parents, and that it must not be prescribed, no prescription of any nature, including curriculum that leads to CAPS. The proposal that he considers doing a survey on homeschoolers and ask homeschoolers how is it that they would like their children to be treated, because clause 37 does not seem to understand. Learners should have a say in that survey or in consultation in terms of the curriculum and choices they would like to follow, and that the clauses, there should be a clause that it must be added that guards the freedom to use any homeschool curriculum approach in terms of schooling. The freedom of choice should not be constrained. Registration of independent schools is supported. The increase of fines in terms of those established schools, cottage schools without registration is supported. Educators in the Eastern Cape, they emphasize that distribution of educators to rural schools must be allowed. Okay, more work needed to be done regarding the distribution of educators to rural schools, and that schools must be given to procure their own learning, teaching, and support material. Safety of teachers and their security considered and addressed. They oppose the additional responsibility of taking care of the learners who became pregnant, and that their parents must take responsibility. I think I repeated that one. Alcohol on school premises, that notion of selling must be scrapped completely out of the bill. The department must collaborate with SAPS and the health department. Alcohol in school events will lead to gender-based violence, more pregnancies, and lack of discipline among the learners. the clause should be revisited. That's what some others state, because alcohol, it did not say alcohols. The clause should be revisited, and alcohol is not allowed in school. This reading the clause. Measure on schools. The participants recommend that Parliament consider small farms, rural schools, as they cannot trust that the department will support with scholar transport. They indicated that there are instances where transport is not available due to non-payment of service providers by the education should not be colonized. Sorry, education should be decolonized. The closure of small schools must be considered. This they are asking over and over again. The rural education policy will assist the small non-viable schools. On the aspect of curriculum, learners should have say in choices. Learners were dropping out because they forced to do maths. There is the campaign for mathematics. Some grandparents had to do homework in English, helping these learners, whilst these grandparents really understood English. They raised it as a concern. There's a need for more subjects to be taught, and that children should be taught in the home language, and that are used as national language. Transport, especially for grade R's, was an issue to be addressed, and that the payment to administer payment for transporting children, it seemed that the department had failed the children, so that must be addressed. For transport, for those walking 15 kilometers, results in dropouts. On infrastructure, eradicate pit toilets, eradicate mud classrooms, pay attention to infrastructure. Overcrowding schools should be addressed. Also looking at maybe temporary mobile classrooms as an interim measure while the infrastructure planning is being processed. On safety and security, Satau had stated that health and safety was paramount, was needed at schools. Schools should be provided with security personnel paid by the state, not the SGB. Schools need to be properly maintained by the department, and that teachers must have a safe environment and that mode of transport. On the learner pregnancy, the DPE should help schools regarding pregnancy after 6 months, as for a qualified practitioner, work, assist the schools. That the health worker must do the rounds and the surroundings in the schools to assess its parents, and that they must avail themselves. Where there's a need to draw the balance when teachers are expected to stop teaching and now become nurses, they look at that as a medical expertise beyond the scope of practice, and that education of children should be free of sex education. That's what other participants said. No regulation of sexuality in terms of CSE. Further noted that also teachers not right. On the special needs education for the Eastern Cape, the bill is not able to accommodate the education of learners with special educational needs. Parliament must try to look at the issue of White Paper 6, because it is one of the things that is being needed and that the schools are looking for. There is a need to address the inclusiveness in the mainstream schools, something that is in the White Paper 6 of 2001, and that is a need for onboarding and inducting educators to understand the inclusive education systems and how teachers can make their classrooms inclusive. On the issue of the online learning, the bill should regulate online learning, and the reopening of online farm schools is a very good alternative, and it is a solution to the schools that are being overcrowded. The values in education or social cohesion issue alludes to the fact that the curriculum must respect all cultures. Christian values should be entrenched in the BELA bill. Education should have values inbuilt. the Christian values should be adopted by government. Not just Christian values, but all religious values should be reflected. That schools must observe religious mourning. Schools became a mess from the day they took Jesus away from schools. There's a concern of the absent fathers in the education of their children, the bullying incidences, the forcing parents to remove their children, that they had to take them to homeschooling. They say, bring back Jesus in schools. Children are responsibility of parents, so to raise them accordingly, we need one's religious. And if you exclude the parent, that is indeed contradicting the children's beliefs. On the aspect of public participation, there's a recommendation for timely public participation to ensure that the public has sufficient time and opportunity to study all the clauses of the bill. That public education sessions prior to the public hearing are announced, all media platforms simultaneously. That engagement of the public on key aspects of the bill should take place well in advance. Speakers had also called for virtual hearings so that parents can participate easily from across country and countrywide. More time being needed to peruse the bill, which clauses they support, which ones they don't support, that by the time they come at the public hearings, they can make informed decisions and be able to contribute properly to public hearings. On the aspect of information dissemination, the allusion of the issue of abortion bill and other misinformation that this distribution allegedly should be information that is packaged correctly for the benefit of the public. As the of the WhatsApp Parliament, that the speakers had depicted the merits of the bill that must be addressed by the portfolio committee. Then lastly, as we go towards the end, section 15 of the report highlights the speaker's views, support. What did the 3 municipalities across the province raise on the BELA bill? Clause 2, which proposes compulsory attendance of children in grade R, was welcomed. And this view was expressed by a large number of participants, which were held both at Amtata, Chris Honey West, and Nelson Mandela at Nangosa Hall. Clause 2 was seen to be beneficial to both learners and teachers, and that this is in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 4, with the attainment of quality education. So they saw that clause 2 to be in line with goal 4 of the SDG. It was also hoped that the practitioners of ECD will also be remunerated accordingly. On the aspect of clause 14, the clause 14, the way it was supported, they said it will emphasize the importance of good administration regarding financial affairs of the schools. And on clause 34, submission of quarterly income and expenditure of schools are to ensure ethical and prudent management of resources. Then going to non-support, the clauses summarily were not supported over and above the others. The clause 8, clause 16, clause 27, clause 37, clause 41. And in summary, quickly, although the bill was supported by many speakers, it was also opposed by others. And those were arguing mentioned that the department, this bill will enable the department to usurp the power and authority of SGP to make language and admission policies. According to them, SGPs are the only legitimate structure and governance of schools which have the authority to develop and adopt acceptable language and admission policies for schools. The opponents of the bill also argued that the centralization of procurement of LTSM will open an opportunity for corruption within the procurement environment take place that can result, amongst others, in delivery of substandard materials to schools. The participants, both supporters and those who were rejecting the bill, were unanimous in the rejection of Clause 8 of the bill, which proposes legislation of possession, consumption, and sale of alcohol in school premises, and having based that on the issues of what substance abuse does in terms of inexplicable problems it brings to the schools that exacerbate social ills. Many participants were the view that the schools should find alternative ways of raising funds. Clause 41, teachers had raised that they should not be burdened with Clause 41, and they raised the issue that this being dealt with by nursing profession. Regardless of the support of the prohibition of corporal punishment, participants said they were silent on the protection of teachers who were assaulted by learners, and it called on the department to provide adequate alternative measures to instill discipline on the learners. On Clause 37, while the supporters emphasized the issue of regulation, those who were against Clause 37 indicated that the adoption of Clause 37 in the bill as it is takes away the right of learners and parents to make democratic choices on the best form of education they wish that their children would take. They also showed concern on the centralization of powers by the head of the department, and also the burden regarding the admin delays and decision-making at provincial level. Also on Clause 37, the issue being that they rejected the aspect of monitoring, the aspect of assessment, and taking the CAPS curriculum. The partial support views is that the bill suggested that it would bring about equity with this education system, and that it was an important alignment of the legislation to look at changes within the education sector. However, the bill was silent on blended and online learning, that all forms of learning was important and they should be given the necessary support that it deserves. And they called on the bill to include in this form to ensure that the education sector is strengthened. The chairperson therefore ended off by thanking all the participants, the perspectives and the views which were shared, and that the public hearings have now been concluded in all 9 provinces. The decision now will lie with eventually being taken based on the inputs that were provided by the public in all 9 provinces. Chairperson and the participants and staff, the stakeholders, and everybody present who ensured that the preparation of the public participation and the processes geared towards better South Africa for the future of our children. The next page would were extracts of the speakers as they spoke about the concerns around the bill in total. I thank you, honorable members, at this stage.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bosch. Members, that is the Eastern Cape report. Can I allow you to make corrections into the report? Bakhona bantu nimkile?
Siseko.
So now you're not alone, Chair.
Nithule anithethi ingathi.
Yeah, Chairperson.
You can't be here very far. These reports, are they making you to sleep, Honorable Sukers?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sis Portia, for the presentation. I think I failed to say the same on the Northern Cape. Thank you for the hard work that you have done together with your team. It is much appreciated. At 7.2, Chair, on the Eastern Cape report, the youth, no mention is made of homeschooled youth. Their involvement in Nelson Mandela Bay was notable. This is under 7.2. And then at 8.1, it says most speakers were not in support of the bill, while the majority were in support. I think it was just a typo. And then at figure 8, clause 27, the last column should be moved to clause 37. I think it's allocated at the wrong place. And then clause 36, it should be added that what was requested was cottage schools or independent micro schools require appropriate regulation so they can register and avoid the penalty that is being increased in the clause. Then in terms of clause 37, I want to echo what was said by Honorable Nodada's comment, that we need a reference to the scale of comments. For example, in Nelson Mandela Bay, 25 speakers rejected clause 37. Even if we don't have specific figures, it should be noted that the majority were opposed, or almost all, for example. I think the comment on equality was not so much about being treated equally, but as being treated in a way that did not acknowledge differences in learning needs and abilities. Then in Nelson Mandela Bay, again at figure 8, clause 41, the third column, much of that belongs to clause 37. Then the report should note that it was SATU objecting to educators acting as midwives, nurses, or be burdened with pregnant learners. This is mentioned in clause 37, for example, but not here. Then in terms of issues for DBE to note, there was wide support for stipends and training for SGBs. And all homeschoolers who addressed the issue stated there was a lack of consultation and research. No homeschooler indicated that consultation and research was adequate. The call for appropriate regulation of cottage schools, i.e. Sorry, I think
What's
somebody.
going on now? Who's calling me? Can everyone just mute your gadgets, please? You can proceed.
Okay. Call for appropriate regulation of cottage schools, i.e. independent micro schools. And then note should be taken that of the Nelson Mandela Bay hearing, at least 2 members of the public, one was a DA-MPL, accused Mr. Ndlebe of misleading the public. And I think he also said the committee in his introduction to the bill. Then in terms of issues for the state law advisor, clause 3, objections that a penalty is not the appropriate way to deal with learners who do not attend schools. And then clause 37, if home visits are an invasion of privacy. Then in general, most of those who rejected the bill stated they rejected the bill as a whole, but they did not have time to address all the clauses, so would limit themselves to the issues they were most concerned about. Many speakers noted that the bill was focusing on the wrong issues or was fundamentally flawed because it was not child-centric. I do not think we can say people were only opposed to 13 clauses in light of people specifically saying and mentioning that. I have some general things for note, Chair, but I'll lean for your guidance in terms of general comments.
No, let us focus on correcting the report, Sukers. This one. General comments are there at the end. These extracts from the speakers. I think
if you would want to add something here, probably you can just in writing give it to Sisposh. Any other person for corrections? So get your hand is up.
Fill that away. Oh,
In the absence of hands, can we adopt the Eastern Cape report?
Chairperson,
Principal.
my hand is too heavy. I'm trying to raise it. It can't. I think let us appreciate a well-oiled report on what transpired in the Eastern Cape. And I want to rise now to confirm that this is a true reflection of what transpired during our stay and visitation in the 3 venues in the Eastern Cape. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Morwane. Honorable Morwane.
Thank you very much, Chair. I second the mover because I was part of this hearing. Thank you so much, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. For members that had moved for the adoption of the minutes. Now, this then makes us to have had all the reports, and I know in all the reports there are some amendments, or rather some issues that were raised by members that would need to be effected. So what we are going to do now, next week, on the 8th of August, we are going to have a meeting that would be looking into the national outlook of what the residents of South Africa are saying on the BELA bill, which will be including all the views from all provinces, and of course the written submissions, which will then going to give us the national outlook. I don't know, Honorable Nodada has referred to what is called quantity and quality of the report. And those terms are used when people are making research. I don't know what does that really refer to, but our report will be looking more or less like these provincial reports. I take it will be like that, says Posh. These provincial reports, I mean, because we would be making a consolidation of all reports. This BELA bill is a national bill. Therefore, we need to have a national outlook, because we wouldn't want a situation where KZN, for instance, would say that no, KZN did not support the bill. Western Cape would say they did not support the bill, and then Eastern Cape, Limpopo, would say that we had supported the bill. Secondly, on the 15th of August, when we meet in Parliament, when we meet physically, what I would ask you to do, Llewellyn, as the secretary of the committee, is to ask DPE when they come, they need to tell us how is the bill going to be funded. Because I think that is one of the other concerns which is raised or was rather raised in the meeting. When we deal with the close to close on the 15th to the 18th, we are going to, it's going to be an engagement meeting. We are going to engage. We have been part of these hearings. We know what the people would say, and we would be guided clause by clause because all the reports from all provinces do have what people have been saying in all the clauses. So what DPE recommends, or rather has been recommending vis-a-vis for what we have been hearing, we are going then to seek guidance from each other. One, we would say, for instance, clause 1, this is what is recommended by DPE in clause 1. And what has been our analysis? What are the people saying? And as members, we would have to agree whether we pass that clause as is, whether we put some rephrase on it, or rather, we would say totally that the public is against that clause. That's how we are going to deal with all the clauses, clause by clause, one by one. Depending on how we do it, I'm also going to repeat again next week because that would be the last meeting before the physical meeting. We are going to deal with clause by clause. Clause 1, we would have to agree, one, if we need to rephrase or not, or we want to take the recommendation as is, or we would be rejecting. Those are what we would be discussing when we deal with clause by clause. We are looking into at least having, depending on the crux of the issues, but each day to deal with 15 clauses. If it's more, maybe it's going to end at 20. So that we try to do justice to the process. But by the 18th, we should have been done. It should be our last day as the committee to deal with anything that has got to do with BELA bill. We should be sending it off to Parliament. So that is what is going to happen. I think I have tried to respond to the issues that were raised in the meeting. And I think we have agreed also that we are going to adopt the minutes in the following meeting next week on the 8th of August. So if there is nothing else, one is thanking you for being part of this meeting. Till we meet next week. On the 8th of August visually again. And also to say thank you very much. I understand it's still constituency period, but by the fact that all members of the committee have been part of this meeting without any apologies, we are looking forward to that similar situation again next week till we close this matter on the fiscal meetings that we are going to have. Honorable Notata.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think it does assist, partly the guidance you've given, and I appreciate you responding to this, Chair, because in anything that we do, we always also want to always be informed by the process. And I think many of us is the first time dealing with, a bill of this nature, particularly for our portfolio. So I would just like to make the following suggestions, Chair. You don't have to respond to it now. You can respond to it in the next meeting or consider it, whatever the case may be. But I do want to appreciate the fact that you did indicate to Llewellyn that DBE must present how the bill will be funded, and to also inform us as a committee to make the right constitutional decision. It's important for them to include a comment from National Treasury on how some of these things can possibly be funded. And I think they've done it previously for other bills in other committees. I've seen that and I've done the research there. That will help us. Then the second thing is that the legal services in Parliament have had the bill since it was submitted to Parliament, as though although they were not physically part of the process on the comments on the public participation, they will have the in-house capacity to make a determination whether there's any constitutionality challenges that exist within the bill. And if they are, they must flag it with us so that we don't pass law that will be constitutionally challenged at a later stage. And I think we're also trying to avoid that, Chair. And I keep on raising this thing not to sound alarmist, but for us to make sure that our process is not tainted by things that we could have avoided in the process. So I would suggest that even before we do deal with clause by clause, they must make a presentation. The Parliamentary Legal Service would say, look, we've looked through this thing. There's nothing that's contrary with the Constitution or any other legal prescripts on this thing. So you can go ahead and do your clause by clause. And they, in the process, must guide us if there's anything that may clash with that. The third and second last thing, Chair, is the issue that you raise about qualitative and quantitative. When I refer to that, I know that it maybe sound like a research thing, but it's precisely what I raised in the report now, that there must be a qualitative analysis of what the written submissions were in terms of clause by clause. What were the submissions saying? What are people comments saying? And in that qualitative analysis, how many of them were in support or not in support of certain specific clauses, so that when we deal with the report, we deal with it with the heaviness that it deserves. I do though feel as if we should have dealt with the reports way before we go to close by close, so that we are fully informed not just by the oral submissions but by the written submissions, qualitatively and quantitatively. But I guess we'll see that report when it comes next week, and then we'll analyze it from there, and we'll see how do we then deal with it, if it's adequate or if it's not adequate from that point of view. And then the last thing, Chair, I would like to suggest, obviously this is a bill that has garnered a lot of interest from South Africans, and if you talk to the communications department, they'll tell you, I think it's one of two bills that have garnered so much support, interest from South Africans. And when we deal with clause by clause, it would be important for that to be publicized on our platforms. I know that we've got limitations in terms of committee room space that we can use in Parliament, but we must use room space in which people are able to log in either virtually, like they've done previously, or it can be publicized on television, where a lot of South Africans will have access to see where are we with the process, because parents and communities have an interest, in the children's future, because the bill speaks directly to that. So those are just the four things, Chair, that I would like to put to your table. It does not necessarily mean that you must respond to them now. You may respond to them in the next meeting, but I do want them to be noted so that you can take into consideration those things, because ultimately the end game and the end goal is to make sure we come out with the law that is fully informed by the financial, constitutional, and qualitative and quantitative discussions that we've taken across the whole process. And I think all of us have been heavily involved in this, and we want to make sure that whatever comes out of it is a good quality law. So that's the suggestion, Chair, and the points that I would like to put to you as Chair. And thank you for clarifying some of the things that I had asked initially. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Noted, Honorable Sugars.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my point is just on the gap, as I brought it up, and the point of order by Honorable Morasetla was then sustained. So may I ask, Chair, that the issue around joint liaison committees on homeschooling, that it will, that important issue of the failure of PEDs like in Northern Cape to abide by the DB instructions, to be put on the agenda for discussion at a future meeting, because it gives credibility to the claim by homeschoolers that there is inadequate consultation, which has direct relevance to the claims that has been made in these two reports. And as I said, only 2 of the 9 provinces have these committees that meet regularly.
No, the problem I have with what you are raising, it's not something that has been raised. It's something that you are picking up from the homeschoolers. And I wouldn't want us to cloud that
with this process, as much as I understand its importance. Now, if there needs to be a consultation or rather homeschoolers meeting with the PEDs or even DBE for that matter, I think it's something that we can arrange out of this process. I do not think that the department, and I'm referring now to the executive, the deputy minister is fortunately in this meeting. I do not think that at their level, they would have a problem to meet with the homeschoolers. And I think their door is open. I'm not speaking on their behalf. But what is my problem with how you raise some of the issues is you would want to cloud everything you pick up and bring it where, in my view, it's not necessarily meant to be at. So I think what you are raising, there is no issue. If you would want us to have a meeting of that nature, we can have. But my advice would be that let's first start by the homeschoolers meeting with the department, or if they want a meeting that is arranged with the department together with the PEDs, we can arrange a meeting of that nature with them, which is a total different thing from what we are dealing with now. They've got their issues just like any other stakeholders, but how that is being dealt with, I think should be dealt with in a procedural manner. I'm not sure if you are getting what I'm trying to say. Lotata, can you lower your hand? And then, Sugars, I'm sure I have responded to you.
Yeah, Chair, I think you, I appreciate your comment. I think I will respond to you in writing, because I think there is a portion that you misunderstand of what it is that I tabled. But I will, like I say, I will respond to you in writing to clarify the point, because the points are very much linked to these reports and what came out of the report. I note your response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. As it may, thank you very much, honorable members. I have thanked you more than enough. Can we now take a rest again? Meet again next week. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mudla Studio. Work
Thank you, Chair.
accomplished.
Long leave.
Long live
Mission
the
accomplished.
chairperson.
And you must
Long
greet
live.
my honorable Nodada on my behalf that side. Thank you.
Hallelujah.
Long live the chair.
Recording stopped.